You know, art takes many forms, yet it all starts with an idea or concept from inside the artist's mind. Welcome to Inside the Artist's Mind. I'm your host, Trey Goodman. On each episode, we meet Valley artists to find out what they do and why they do it. Skateboarding, paper mache, video. You might not think of these as traditional Native American art, but today we're going to meet a couple of artists from the Cutting Edge Remix exhibit at the Heard Museum. We'll be talking with Dustin Craig, a skateboard artist and local filmmaker, but first we're going to meet Hector Ruiz, a local artist and owner of the Chocolate Factory in downtown Phoenix. We met with Hector and Dustin inside the Heard's Crossroads Gallery. So Hector, welcome to Inside the Artist's Mind, and we're here at the very cool Heard Museum with the Remix exhibit, which you are a part of.
Yeah.
So you're a Native American artist?
Yeah, Mexican Kickapoo.
And what is Remix all about? What is this exhibit?
The idea was that there's a lot of Native artists, especially locally, that are doing some really great contemporary work, definitely. And this was to showcase and show that it's at a world-class level. You know,
and as we have this discussion, we're showing your work as we speak, and you're into, like, what are you not into? You're into painting, sculpture, sketching, fill in the rest. I mean,
printmaking, block printing. Pretty much I'll do anything, but sculpture and painting and printmaking is probably my favorite.
Paper mache.
Paper mache, yeah.
How did you get involved in all this art, and you're at such a level now? How did that happen?
It was kind of a rebellion to my formal art education at ASU. Really wanted me to narrow down and focus on one thing, and never really jived with me. And so after school, I just started dabbling into all kinds of art, and that's where I've remained.
But you make a living as an artist, right? I mean, you actually own a gallery in Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
The Chocolate Factory.
Yep.
And you make a living. I mean, so you're a very successful artist. What is the key to that?
There's a pinch of luck in there,
Yeah?
that helps.
I don't know.
But,
I've seen you. We're looking at your work today. Come on. Your work's great.
Just determination. I mean, just staying with it, long days, long hours in the studio, and I mean, it's my passion, so I mean, I got to be there every day. It's something I would do regardless success or failure, but I happen to have a studio full of work, and the curator actually from this museum came through about 2 years ago and saw the studio full of work and called me on Monday the next week and offered me a solo show here.
But I mean, if ASU hadn't have been forcing you down so much, you wouldn't have maybe blossomed as much? I mean,
it's possible. I was pretty disillusioned when I graduated and traveled a bit, and that kind of re-inspired me being out of the country for a while.
Where'd you go?
I was all over, like, Asia and India and Cambodia.
Does your work have that influence?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, that actually was probably more influence from those travels than 5 years of school.
Hey, let's talk about your paper mache and the process. I don't have a clue how that's done. Can you explain how that's...
It's almost out of, like, resourcefulness, because it's such a cheap material. I just take new times and, all the free papers around, tear them up and flour and water, and that's it,
And then you paint them, right?
Paint them, yeah. I usually use, like, chicken wire or some sort of structure underneath, but,
You enjoy that?
I really do like that, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of unusual.
It's kind of inspired from these Judas figures I saw in Mexico, Frida Kahlo's museum, and they're about 8 to 10 feet tall, and I like this big size of them. Yeah.
What's the tallest paper mache you've done?
There's one I didn't hear that was about 20, 25 feet. It was all the way up to the ceiling in here.
Is that what stopped you, the ceiling?
Actually, I built it in my studio, and I have 10-foot ceilings, so I had to build it in 3 pieces, and then the first time I ever saw it together was when we installed it in here.
What's your favorite medium to work in?
Toss up between painting and sculpture. I go back and forth. The sculpture is really physical, so sometimes I'll spend the whole day painting or drawing.
Let's talk about your painting. I went over to the Chocolate Factory and saw your work, and a lot of it seems to be very political or social. Can you speak to that?
It's kind of just my life experience. It's about change, it's about identity, loss of identity, culture, loss of culture.
So that the message, is there an underlying message in all your work, or just certain areas of it? What would you say?
I'd say 95% of it seems to, saying something, or it's hoping to engage the audience in some way and make them question what they think, or it does change. It is political. Sometimes it has to do with the border. Sometimes it, has to do with, like I said, identity and, loss of culture, kind of homogenization of culture. I mean, and that's kind of what I express in the work. And I know I'm not alone, so I hope other people identify with the work as well.
Would you see Remix being a part of that? I mean, a lot of people are thinking Native American art is a certain bend to it. This is not
This
that.
is almost to redefine it. You know, people come in here and they're expecting, you know, the pots, the great of the past, which is excellent.
Yeah.
But then, you know, this hits them right over the head because, you know, they're not expecting this, and it's just such a great show. So you figure you'd be at SMOCA or the Phoenix Art Museum to see this.
Now, I understand the show's going to go on to New York.
Yeah,
How does that make you feel?
it's great. I mean, it's going to the Smithsonian, so I mean that's definitely a good thing.
Well, how did you get into Remix specifically? I mean, they chose 15 artists, and you're one of the 15.
You know, my background obviously, and then I think that, you know, about a year and a half ago I did do a solo show here. I had about 35 works here.
What would you say to the public? Why should they come out and see the Remix versus another show? What's the attraction?
Museums all the time. I mean, I think this is the kind of standout show. I mean, it hits every aspect of video and sculpture, painting. It's, you know, just a great contemporary show.
What were some of the other highlights?
You know, I just started showing with the Bentley Gallery
Yeah.
last season, and that was good. I mean, that was going through college. I always aspired to, you know, hoping to show in a place like that someday. So it's nice to be part of that. And of course, I'm looking forward to the Smithsonian. I mean,
That's
that's
gonna be something.
very exciting.
Well, let's talk about some more of your painting. The colors are just like, they just pop. Blue, especially.
Mhm.
Is there any message in that, or?
You know, in college there was they taught us try to stay away from like a lot of black and primary colors. So it was again kind of a revolt against that. These are colors right out of the tube. You know,
I was gonna say, it seems like when you use color, it's like, yeah, it's like.
it's pretty bold, and I do use a lot of black in it too. I really like black. You know,
So are you just a rebellious person in general?
maybe against, you know, certain art movements. You know.
How do you feel the Native American art is being accepted in the United States? I mean,
I'd say it gets overlooked quite a bit, and that's another reason this show is important. Is to show that, you know, it shouldn't be getting overlooked. That there's some really great artists doing some great things, and you know, people want to classify it as not being a contemporary art. Maybe it's Indian art or something, but it's both.
well, let's talk about the Chocolate Factory. What's that name about, first off?
You know, it was kind of a play off, you know, like Latino or Hispanic or something. I wanted to say something that was like chocolate, so it was more accessible to people, so people didn't feel excluded. And it started, you know, I wanted to deal with a lot of different minorities and their experience. But being now that we're kind of a minority-majority state, you know, even like whites or Anglos are minorities now too.
Yeah.
So, you know, I show everybody down there, you know.
How do you see the Phoenix art scene evolving? Like, where does it come from? Where is it going?
You know, it's coming from, you know, that Southwest, the kind of stereotypical Southwest, and it's evolved. It still has that, but it's progressing and evolving, and I'm pretty excited about it.
I mean, your work is really phenomenal. What's in the future for you?
Just trying to get international and more national. You know,
Is that a goal of yours?
Yeah. You know, I'd like to show back in Mexico, going to Mexico City. I'd like to get overseas, you know, and spread out in the U.S. a little more too.
Is there a possibility this remix will go somewhere beyond
Yeah,
New
there's
York?
talk.
Although New York's not a small place.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, New York.
You know, anything can happen once it's there. There's talk that it's going to go to Toronto from there. They're wanting to pick it up.
So
you know.
now you get to travel with the show?
Yeah.
Would you create on the road if the mood struck you?
Sure.
You have like the paint and it's in your suitcase or something?
Yeah, I mean, I get really antsy when I'm away from my studio. You know, like if I go on a vacation, I start getting antsy. I want to get back to the studio, but you know, if there's something in front of me, I'll
Maybe
start
sketch it
drawing
out
or-
or something and then go back?
Yeah.
Or?
yeah, I'll do little sketches and keep them, and then kind of bring them to fruition when I get back to the
Notice
studio.
your sketches are really intricate. What's that about?
You know, sometimes I'll go back to them, so I want to make sure I have all the ideas down, and then you know, I'll stick them up on my wall. And sometimes it takes a year, 2 years to get back to them, but
Oh, really?
I want to make sure I, you know,
Okay, so the art might not be finished yet and you're still working on it?
sometimes.
How
yeah.
do you know when a piece is done?
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
I get to that certain point, you know. I work on 10, 12 pieces at one time, so, you know, I move around quite a bit. And then when there's a show in sight, then I'll wrap everything up
How
towards
does
the
it
end.
feel to let a piece go?
Used to be hard. Now it's, you know, more exciting, especially when it goes to a good home, you know, or it goes to a good collector. Or,
So Hector, there is no doubt you have so much passion in your work. So I got to ask you this: what if you couldn't be an artist? You ever thought about, like, if you couldn't do that, what would you do?
I mean, it's almost impossible to think of. I'd have to lose my arms and my head. I mean, it pretty much defines me. I mean, it is every day I'm doing it. It's like just my life. I'd be in the arts still. I'd be running the gallery maybe a little more, but I'd be surrounded by art still. I really love it, and it moves me.
So you have to create, right? I mean, you mentioned if you take a break from it, you start getting.
Yeah, I can't really even. I mean, it's kind of sad, but I can't enjoy vacations the way I used to, just because something will spur me to do another piece, and I'll really want to get back to that.
Do you like showing your work at the Chocolate Factory, and what's the future of the Chocolate Factory?
I actually don't show my work there. People can come look at my studio, and I like that people can see where I work, and that's kind of the idea with that. There's 2 other artists that rent from me there, and then the gallery I show other people's work. So it was kind of the idea that I felt there was a good contemporary space lacking downtown with good lighting and high walls.
Yeah, it is a great place.
So I kind of created that space, and I really handpicked the artists from all over the nation, really, and try to bring them here and kind of ignite the scene a little more.
Well, the name of our show is Inside the Artist's Mind, so we always ask the artists, what's inside their mind. So, Hector, what is inside your mind?
I could go on for, there's so much going on. I mean, I have endless ideas in the studio. I mean, it's just chock full of ideas, and part of it's just day-to-day experiencing, stuff I hear on the radio or hearing conservatives talk, kind of spurs me on.
You're definitely into the politics side, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Is there another medium that you're holding in your back pocket you haven't worked in yet you may pull out?
Looking to do some bronze works. I already have the ideas and the sketches for them. I just need to get to a foundry.
Well, hopefully we'll catch up with you down the road if you make it back from New York and Toronto
definitely.
and all those other places, and maybe we can see your bronze work. That would be something to see. But definitely want to encourage people to come down to the Herd and see your work as well as the other 14 artists. I mean, it's here till...
It's here till April. Just a great show. We're lucky to have it here in the Valley, and definitely should come out.
I agree with you. I mean,
take advantage.
Something to see. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching IAM. I'm Joe Baker, co-curator of the exhibit Remix. We're excited to share this work with you today, and we'll be right back. But first, a message from Local First.
Supporting locally owned businesses is better for the economy, builds unique communities, and preserves the environment. Find out more at localfirstaz.com. Think local, buy local, be local.
Welcome back to Inside the Artist's Mind. We now join Trey as he speaks to filmmaker Dustin Craig.
So Dustin, thanks for joining us on the set. And of course, we're back here at the Herd Museum and the Remix show, which you are a part of.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
How does it make you feel to be one of the 15 artists to be involved in Remix?
To be selected to be part of this lineup has really been a big honor, and especially because I do look up to a lot of the people that are on this roster. Yeah. So to be included in a list of names that are on this Remix list is, it's awesome.
Now let's introduce the audience to what your art is. It involves skateboarding. Can you tell us how skateboarding got you into the arts and into becoming a filmmaker, that whole progression?
Yeah. Well, I think that this, my piece is an installation. It exists inside a room with four walls, and it's definitely an immersive kind of exhibit in which you come into this room and you are able to sort of behold this video projection that you see on screen, but also adding to that, on each wall are actual skateboard decks and artwork that's been actually that I drew on the wall. Yeah. Yes. What this really is just at least for me as the artist who created this was sort of blending the two cultures that I come from. For one, I'm a White Mountain Apache, right. And two, I'm a skateboarder, and both of those things are very dear to me, and I think that I draw a lot from both of those cultures. We have White Mountain Apache culture, which is obviously predates America even.
Sure.
And then we have a very young culture of skateboarding.
So you've taken skateboarding. It's not just a hobby or something that you do. Mm-hmm. It has actually become an art, and you do it at different levels. You're taking still photos. You're a filmmaker now. Mm-hmm. and you're also creating skateboard art. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of levels there.
Being a skateboarder is such a part of every piece of who I am. And as a kid, growing up on the reservation, skateboarding was really kind of my window to the outside world. I think a lot of people who come from small communities tend to sort of look at their communities as sort of being out of the loop or uncool. And especially as a young teenager, everything else always seems so much bigger and cooler. So you're always looking outward. And through skateboarding and skateboard magazines, I was able to read interviews and articles with pros who've traveled all over the world, read about road trips to Europe or road trips throughout the Midwest. And also as a part of this skateboard literature, you know, I was also exposed to photography. You know, different photographers made names in the little skateboard world.
And that just made you want to do that then?
And exactly. And so much of being a skateboarder is a do-it-yourself sort of work ethic, because you know, back when I was a teenager as a skateboarder, it wasn't as popular and mainstream as it is now.
Right.
So generally, skateboarding attracted more like the outcasts, the people who didn't really fit into sports and, you know, just didn't fit into the normal mold of high school life.
Right.
And so it was kind of a nice area for me to be in, because for one, I wasn't, you know, a super athlete. And skateboarding gave me an opportunity to just immerse myself into something.
Well, you certainly got immersed in it, because now you're a filmmaker
Mm-hmm.
and you have a project at one of the biggest PBS affiliates in the United States,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally. Actually, I guess if you were to ask me what my day job was, I primarily make my living as a freelance filmmaker. I've been making documentary films that deal with sort of culture and history, Native American culture and history, since the beginning, because, like I said, they're very close to who I am. And ironically, this sort of filmmaking career got its start because of skateboarding. You know, like as far back as I can remember, you know, when you're a young skateboarder, you want to document your tricks. You know, and you also see these videos in which you idolize these pros who, and so.
So you literally picked up a camera
Yeah.
at that time
Yes.
and got to this point today.
I think, yeah, exactly. It's
Wow.
my dad had this VHS camcorder that he got through the tribe's legal department. He brought it home one day, and first thing I did was I started filming me and my friends going off of this launch ramp. And the next step was, you know, we'd have hours and hours of footage of trying 1,000 tries for one trick, you know. And then when that trick finally went down, was how do we show this without having to rewind and fast forward
So you
past
needed
all
to
of
edit
it.
it then,
So
right?
we learned to edit, and that was essentially stacking 2 VCRs on top of each other, having one play and the other one record, pause.
Come away since
And
then.
and then you take that and eventually throw in your soundtrack. But yeah, it's really been something that I grew up doing, and as I became more competent in this sort of procedure of editing, I think you realize that, hey, I'm telling stories.
What is
So,
the message in your stories?
I think that at least for me as a White Mountain Apache person, I'm also Navajo on my dad's side. I think that a lot of the Native people here in the Southwest, something that's been sort of this recurrent theme in my life is the concept of home. I come from a place, a land base that I can say goes back, you know, even that predates the origins of this country.
Right.
It predates even the origins of who owned the supposedly owned the Southwest. You know, predates Mexico, predates Spain, and when you come from a history and culture and a people who have never been moved, you know, I think that you have a really different concept of home. Whereas most
thought of it that way.
Americans are immigrants. You know, they've come here from somewhere else. They can trace their lineage to other continents. And for most Native people here, you know, we see this country. This is home. You know, and everything that we, our whole entire worldview is formulated from where we come from.
Let's talk about the culture thing. There's I think 21. Is
Yeah,
there 21
yeah.
tribes or nations in Arizona.
Yeah.
So I mean, how do you feel like at times when people lump the whole Native American, it's sort of like this Indian thing, right? They just
Yeah,
lump it together.
definitely.
How do you feel about that? And are you trying to break down those walls, or?
Yeah, that definitely is one of the things that we contend with as Native people. Like you said, for example, here in Arizona, there's 21 distinct Native tribes, each with their own language, own dialects, own customs, own belief system, and their own history. And when you are lumped into this group as Indians, you know, it's tough because this label is so generic. That it's trying to classify such a diverse group of people that, you know, that's why it's very important for me to always try and identify, you know, which particular tribe I'm from. Like, even if I'm to use just the term Apache, you know, to the outside world, Apache encompasses, you know, like, what is Apache? But to Apache people, we know that there are so many different bands, almost like different groups of Apache people who differed, you know, greatly, but yet retain some, you know, really stark similarities as well.
Well, how do you feel the remix show? Is that separating the different nations or tribes, or I mean, is that helping educate the public, or?
I think, if we use my piece for example, you know, we have this fusion of Apache imagery, photos from my community where I come from. Skateboard footage of young skateboard boys that I have skateboarded with and saw grow up. Even footage of myself skateboarding. And it also incorporated into this little film are elements of, like, my photography, my artwork, graphic art, graffiti art, as well as, you know, different aspects of my filmmaking. It's all channeled into this exhibit, and that's a very nice venue that you generally aren't going to see.
You have experience working at WGBH
Yeah.
in Boston, so you've got to feel pretty good about, at your young age,
Yeah.
the opportunities that are coming your way, don't you think?
For me, even my filmmaking career, I've produced and directed a small handful of films that have broadcast on PBS nationally, and
Which is no small thing.
yeah.
I
yeah,
like how you
yeah.
just sort of said,
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
It definitely is a big deal, and it's just something that I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to do. But I've always, for me, I know that this opportunity has come from two very important things in my life. One, for where I come from as a Native person, as a White Mountain Apache. Lots of the stories that I draw from, the inspiration comes from home. And at the same time, so much of the technical skills that I've gained as a filmmaker, as a creative person, came from this very fluid culture of skateboarding. I left my reservation 9 years ago and moved here to the Valley to complete school. I was planning on trying to get through college as quickly as possible with an arts degree, get a teaching certificate, and go back home to my reservation in White River and teach at the high school level. That was the goal. And so everything else, you know, living in New York, living in Boston, you know,
I
producing.
think we're better off that you did get sidetracked, though.
Yeah,
You
no,
created
it's-
some
it's-
great things and more to come. Right?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and this project, the most recent project, was a 72-minute documentary film about the Chiricahua Apache Geronimo, who's, you know, a very controversial figure in history.
Well, obviously that's not your last project, right?
No.
You've got something in the future you're planning.
Yeah, I think this installation, this little film, is called Four Wheel War Pony.
The one here at Remix.
Yeah, the one here in Remix, and really it's kind of, it's got elements of the film that I really want to make. I've been a filmmaker for hire probably since the start, so I technically don't own the works. You know, generally,
Right.
it's the production companies that I work for, direct for, own these works. And the film that's really close and near and dear to my heart is actually a story that comes from home. And hopefully that this little film can help generate some interest.
Well, we always ask, the name of our show is Inside the Artist's
Mm-hmm.
Mind, so we ask the artist what's inside their mind. So what is inside your mind?
Well, you know, last year I spent the entire year out on the East Coast. And the whole purpose of this was to really dive deeply and immerse myself into Apache history, which, you know, a lot of Apache history is Arizona history. I think that if anything that I would like to bring home from this experience is just the fact that here in Arizona, you know, it's such a fascinating history that involves people from all walks of life. You know, this conflict, so sort of settling of the West is very chaotic, very turbulent, and I think that a lot of our people, Native people, you know, we really haven't had the chance to fully get over this.
Right.
You know, that there's a lot of stuff that still lingers. There's a lot of ends that are sort of untied, and so because of that, I think that there is a voice that's waiting to be channeled. You know, and that's hopefully I can be a part of the process of bringing some of these stories to the forefront.
Well, I certainly want to encourage people to come down, see your work here at the Remix before it moves on to New York and Toronto, and see you before you really bust out and hit big. And hopefully, when you get to that level, you'll still agree to come on our show.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
we'll show your latest
No,
documentary.
I really appreciate to be, you know, I'm thankful to be part of this show, and I'm happy to be, you know, I think in Arizona we have a really fascinating scene here, and I'm glad to be a part of it, and you know, however possible.
Dustin, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching IAM. You know, Hector and Dustin are doing some very creative work, and you should check it out. Till next time. For more information on our show, contact us at 480-969-3789 or drop us a line at moreinfo@iamtvshow.com.